with Hashem's help, we are going to finish Be'ez Hashem Masechta Megilah today, Daf Lamed Beis. We are holding Daf Lamed Aleph Omed Lamed Aleph Omed Beis, one to about 12 lines from the bottom. Tanya, we learned in the Braisa. Rab Shimon ben Elazar, Rab Shimon ben Elazar says, Ezra. I'm just saying, somebody's joining. Tanya, we learned to the Braisa. Rab Shimon ben Elazar, Rab Shimon ben Elazar says, Ezra tiken lehem liyisrael. Ezra made a takana for the Jewish people. Sheyehu koirin kololish shebetaris kahanim koidim atzeres. Before Shavuos, you should read Parshas B'Chukais im B'Chukaisai Telechu, and the klolos, the curses that are written over there before Shavuos. V'sheba Mishnah Torah koidim Rosh Hashanah, and read Parshas Kisavai before Rosh Hashanah. So the Gemara asks, my time, what's the reason of this takana? You see, in the calendar, it always works out that way, because right before Shavuos, we hear, but right before Shavuos, we read Parshas B'Chukaisai. Right before Rosh Hashanah, read Parshas Kisavai. But that was a takana, no matter how they set up, if you read the whole Torah in 1 year or 3 years. So my tama, what's the reason for this takana? Omer Abaye v'teimer shlokish kidei shetichle hashana v'kilaleiseha, to finish off the year with the klalos. So the Gemara says like this. Bishlama should be Mishnah Torah, before the one that's in Devarim, there is a Tichla Hashana B'Kiloseh. You end off the year with all the klolos. Kadesh Tichla Hashana B'Kiloseh, because it's Rosh Hashanah. Ela Shabataris Kahanim Alta Atzeres Rosh Hashanah. Why do we read B'Chukaisai before Shavuos? Is Shavuos considered a Rosh Hashanah? How could you say that's a Rosh Hashanah over there? So the Gemara says yes. In Atzeres Name Rosh Hashanah, Atzeres is also called Rosh Hashanah. The Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah of Atzeres al Peres Elam. On Shavuos, there's a Rosh Hashanah for Peres Elam. So therefore, Peres Elam. So if Shavuos is a type of Rosh Hashanah, so therefore you should read the klolos. So by reading the klolos and experiencing the klolos beforehand, you end off the year like we're saying that, okay, we experienced what we were supposed to get punished. Now we begin a new chapter. So that's why we read the klolos before Rosh Hashanah and before Shavuos time. The only thing is that the question is, why don't we read klolos before Pesach or before Sukkot? Because each one is their own Rosh Hashanah. Also, we never exactly end off the year before with the klolos. In other words, there's always before Rosh Hashanah, there's always Parshas Nitzavim, and before Shavuos is always Parshas Bamidbar. That's always that. We're not exactly. We want to end off the year by saying the klolos, but not the last thing in the year should be klolos. Tanya, we learned in the Braisa. Another thing, Rab Shimon ben Elazar Rab Shimon ben Elazar says, if you're asking advice and old people tell you, Susar, knock the building down. Viladim, and young people say, B'nai, build. So who should you listen to? The young or the old? So the Gemara says, Susar, listen to the old people, Susar, break it down, Ba'al tivna, and don't build. B'nai, Shastiras Gainim, when an old experienced person tells you to knock it down, Binyam, their intention is because you're going to build something better. Ubinyan Na'arim, the way young people try to build is stira, by they're so short-sighted that they end up collapsing what they're trying to build. In other words, when you're asking advice about something to do, take it from somebody who is experienced, who has a long-term view of things. And if they tell you knock it down, because they're telling you in the short term it's going to be uncomfortable, you'll be without a home, but in the long term you'll have a better home. And if the young people say, no, but it'll take so long, build, build? The answer is they're telling you to build, but it's ended. In the end of the day, you'll have to knock it down. The similar davar, you find a similar thing in Tanakh. Rechavam ben Shloima. Rechavam, the son of Shloima, when he took over the Malucha, he asked advice of the old people, and they told him, let up on the taxes. You're going to lose the people. They're not going to be able to endure your reign. Loosen up a little bit, be more flexible, and then eventually you'll get the confidence of the people. The Rechavam then asked the young people, and they advised them, increase the taxes, show that you're strong and firm in your belief. And he went with the advice of the young people. And because of that, there was a split there was a complete split in the Malucha. And that's how the 10 tribes, because Yeravam and Nevat broke away with 10 of the Shvatim. So that's the story. Tanur Rabbanim, the rabbis talk. Shabbos Shachris, they finish off the parsha. Let's say they finish off Parshas B'Shalach this week. Shabbos Mincha, they start by Yishma Yisroi. By Mincha, where they finish off in Mincha, Shabbos Mincha, Shom Karim Basheni. Monday morning, they don't start from the beginning of Yisroi. They start from Shlishi. Basheni, when they finish on Monday, Shom Karim B'Chamishi, that's what they finish off on Thursday. And so then from Thursday, they reach Shlishi to Revi. Revi to Chamishi. Shlishi to Revi, I'm sorry. B'Chamishi, on Thursday, Sham Karin L'Shabbos Haba. That's how you start the next week. So you ended up starting the next week. If you read to Revi'i prior to Shabbos, so you start every parsha from Revi'i. Divrei Meir. Rabbi Yehuda, I mean, no, you repeat it. Mokam Shmasikim Shabbos Shachris Sham Karin Mincha. Wherever they stop Shabbos Shachris, the next parsha they read Mincha Shabbos. Ubesheni Ubechamishin. They read the same thing over from the beginning of the parsha till Sheni on Monday and on Thursday. V'la Shabbos Abba, and the next Shabbos they start again from the beginning. Amar Rab Zera said the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda said. Mokam Shmafsikim Shabbos Shachris, where they stopped in Shabbos Shachris. Shom Karim B'Mincha B'Sheni B'Chamisha Shanabah. That's where you start on Monday, Thursday, and the following Shabbos. You all start from the very beginning of the parsha. So he seemed to paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara asks the obvious question, V'leima, let him say, halacha Rabbi Yehuda. The halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Why did he repeat the exact words of what Rabbi Yehuda just said? Just say simply, the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Answer the Gemara, we're on the Daf Lamed Beis and Aleph, Mishum da'afchiluhu, because in some texts, it was reversed, the opinions. Rab Meir said what Rabbi Yehuda said, and Rabbi Yehuda said what Rab Meir said. And therefore, so in order to clarify what the halacha is, he said it straight. This is the halacha. It's not clear if Rabbi Yehuda said it, Rab Meir said it, but the halacha is what we do, that by Shabbos Mincha, Monday, Thursday, and the next Shabbos, you all start from the beginning of the parsha. Tanur Rabbanim. Now, this is a halacha in how to get an aliyah. When you get an aliyah, Paisach, you open the Torah, V'roya, and you see the place where they're going to lay. Goylel, you roll the Sefer Torah. Umevarech, and you make the bracha, and v'choizu u'peiseach v'koyre. Then you open up the Sefer Torah and read the Sefer Torah. Divrei Rab Meir. This is Rab Meir holds. Why does Rab Meir say you have to close the Sefer Torah? L'chayra, you should do what Rabbi Yehuda says. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Peiseach, you open the Sefer Torah, v'roya, and you see the place. U'mevarech, and you make the bracha v'koyre, and you read. Because Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that if you're going to close the Sefer Torah and make the bracha, there's a tircha de tzibura. You're going to waste the time of the tzibur, but you have to reopen the Sefer Torah again. So keep it open, and then you make the bracha and read. So the Gemara asks, so that makes more sense, because Rabbi Yehuda's opinion makes more sense. My time with Rab Meir, what does Rab Meir hold? That you close the Sefer, the Torah, before you make the bracha. And for the Gemara, could the Ula, Rab Meir held like what Ula said. The Amar Ula said, Mipnei ma amru, why did they say HaKorei b'Torah? For example, the Baal Koira lo yisayeya lemeturgim, should not help out the meturgimim. There's in the ancient times, as we met this before, that there was a Baal Kriya, somebody who read the Chumash, read the Sefer Torah, and there was someone who translated it over in Targum, so the people could understand what we just read. So the Baal Kriya should not help out the one who is saying the Targum. Why not? He'll add a few words, because Targum Targum Kosu B'Torah. People will say and not assume that Targum is written in the Torah. The Torah has the Hebrew and plus the Aramaic. So people will come to, because the Bakri is repeating the Targum. So they'll think it's written in the Sefer Torah. So Hachinami, that same idea could apply. Why you don't want to make the bracha with the Sefer Torah open? There's going to be some Am Haaretz who's going to think that what? That the brachas, Asher Bacha Banu, Asher Nasan Torah, is written in the Torah. Kadesh Lo Yomru, people should not say brachas ksuvim b'Torah, that the brachas are written in the Torah. Therefore, the halacha should be, according to Rabbi Meir, that you close the Sefer Torah and then you say the brachas. Rabbi Yehuda says, Targum ika lamite brachos lamite. I can understand that you might make a mistake and think that Targum words are written in the Torah. Sometimes you do find Targum words written in the Torah. So we don't want the Balkari to help out the Meturgamim. Fine, but brachos lamite. Nobody's going to make a mistake thinking the brachos are in the Torah, because we're calling up all different sorts of people, and each one is going to repeat a bracha. People are going to realize that there's no brachos written in the Torah. They're saying it by heart. So that's why Rabbi Yehuda says you're better off leaving the Sefer Torah open and making the Baruch Hu, and then start reading. And it seems that's the most prevalent minhag to do, although some people do close it. But really, if you're going to keep it open, you should look to the side also. So that way you keep both opinions. So some people, like, they'll have the right on the side, there's a card with the brachas there. So if you look to the side and make the bracha, you don't have Rabbi Meir's issue, and you have the better view of Rabbi Yehuda of not wasting time having the Balkri reopen the Sefer Torah after you make the bracha. Amar Rab Zeira, Amar Rab Matna, halacha again, Paseach v'roya mavarach v'kareh. First you open the Torah, see we're holding, make the bracha and read. So v'leim halacha Rabbi Yehuda. Why didn't Rab Zeira say the halacha straight out like Rabbi Yehuda, that you can keep the Sefer Torah open? And for the Gemara, because there's different opinions of what Rabbi Yehuda said. It could be Rabbi Yehuda said what Rabbi Meir said. Rabbi Meir said what he said, what Rabbi Yehuda said. So the opinions are reversed in some traditions. So he just repeated what the halacha is without saying who said it. Amar Rab Zeira, Amar Rab Matana, haluchais v'habimais ein behem mishum kedusha. It's not clear what this luchais is. There's no kedusha, holiness, to this luchais. So Rashi's first says, halichais lo yadati mahen. I have no idea what these are. Some say that it means the binding of a chumash, of the binding of a chumash that falls off, have no kedusha to it. It's only the chumash itself has kedusha to it. So that's what one opinion says. Bima is they used to make a stand where the king sat and read the Sefer Torah during Sukkot on the 8th year, during the time of Hakel. They made a stand where he sat. That place where he stood or sat, he actually sat because the king was the only one allowed to sit in the Azara. There, that after it's done, that bima, that stand, has no kedusha to it. Amar Rab Shvatya, Amar Rab Yochanan, Hagoylil Sefer Torah Shtorach Sheyamidenu Al Hatefer. So what he says is that when you roll the Sefer Torah, they give you Galila, make sure the sewing part that connects one page to the other faces you. In other words, don't roll it so that the sewed part is already rolled up. Have a sewed part facing you. And the reason is because if you pull it so tight, you'll be able to see that you're pulling it too tight, and you'll stop. You'll let up a little bit, because if you roll it and you don't have that those sewed part, you might come to rip the Sefer Torah. So by having the sewed part, you can actually tell when you're tightening so much, and therefore he held that the halacha is that when you roll the Sefer Torah, make sure the tefer, the sewed part connecting, should be facing you. I don't see anybody noyeg this halacha. It's possible that the quality of our Sefer Torah, we're not so concerned that you're going to come to rip a Sefer Torah. I've never heard anybody chas v'shalom rip a Sefer Torah while they were doing Galila. So we're not so makbid. But in the halacha, it says that the tefer should be facing you. V'amar Rab Shvatya, a number of things that we're going to have from this Rab Shvatya. Rab Shvatya said, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Hagoylil Sefer Torah, goyliloi mi b'chutz, ve'ein goylil mi b'fnim. If you have a Sefer Torah on your lap, right? So instead of rolling it from the side that's facing you, roll it from the other side if you're rolling it, because if you're going to roll it from the side facing you, the part that's not facing you may roll off your legs. So make sure that you roll it from the side facing you. You can have this idea when you have like a Simchas Torah, those kids Sefer Torahs. So that's when you see it, that you roll it on your lap, and actually you roll it from the side that's away from you. When you're right by the end, when you're right by the end, then you can use the part that's near you, because you're closing up and you want to look at the letters prior to you closing to Sefer Torah. Don't use the outer one, because that blocks your vision of the words. And Rashi brings from Masechta Sofrim that there's a mitzvah There's a mitzvah when you're doing Galila, and that's what we do. We show the handwriting, the script of all of the Sefer Torah to everybody. So also when you're wrapping it up to yourself, you should also take a look at the script prior to you totally closing the Sefer Torah. I love this Gemara. 10 people that read the Torah. Hagodol b'shebehem. You want the greatest one, Goylo Sefer Torah. Give him Galila. Galila, I think, was Hagbar and Galila at that time. Why? Because Hagoylel noitel schar kulam. The Goyleloi, the one that does the wrapping of the Sefer Torah, he takes the reward for all the people who got aliyahs. The Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Asora Shekar b'Torah. There are 10 people that called up to the Torah. Right? Not 10 people, 7 people. But what it means is they called up, you have 10 people in the room, they gave aliyahs, Hagoylel Sefer Torah, the one that wrapped up the Sefer Torah after all the aliyahs, Kibol Sacha Kulam, he got the reward from everybody. Sacha Kulam Kasal Kadaitach, he gets the reward for everybody. I mean, everybody got an aliyah. They should also get a reward. His reward corresponds, is as much as all of them put together. So according to the Gemara, the Galila is the most important part, more important than Aliyas, and therefore you give it to the Gadol, the greatest, most important person in the room. You give the Galila for, and you gets the more schar. That's why if you're on Simchas Torah and you can't afford all the heavy Aliyas, make sure you buy Galila, because you get the Sachar Kulam according to the Gemara. Since this Rab Shvatya never appeared so much, so we're saying certain statements by him. Here, we're not talking about like this. You have to think positive. That's what he's talking about. And you're deciding what to do, whether you should go into an investment, buy a house, or something like that. And you hear a voice that says, yes, or do it, or something like that. It's not from heaven, but you get the impression that there's a siman that you have, a signpost that makes you think positive. You're allowed to give that credence to think positive, because although there's an is in the Torah that you're not allowed to be superstitious, loy senachashu, right? That means if you say, if a cat crosses my path, then I'm not going to do something. So there's a halacha, you cannot be, the Torah says you cannot be superstitious, but this doesn't come into the category of being superstitious. You're just looking for a sign for you to think positive, sort of like what we have on Rosh Hashanah, where you dip the apple in the honey and you have all the simonim. These are signposts to think positive, because as metrachtgit v'zangit, if you think good things happen. So how do you know you're allowed to do that? It's not a problem. So the Gemara is going to give you an example. Shnema voznecha tishmana dava me'acharecha lemor. Your ears heard something behind you saying, and you're allowed to follow it. From that pasuk in Yeshaya. V'hainu milu. That means this is talking about the shama kal gavra b'masa. You heard the voice of a man in the city, where a place where you normally not hear a man, and you hear the sound of somebody talking. Or the call itzisa bedavra. You hear the women who normally are not in the field. You hear the sound of a woman in the field. V'hud amar, and that voice says, hein, hein, yes, yes. Or v'hud amar, lav, lav, no, no. It says it twice. Then you can give credence that maybe Hashem is causing these people to give you a good sign to follow through of what you wanted to do, or prevent you from what you wanted to do, to help you solve your dilemma. So you are allowed to use like a signpost, like a voice that comes out that you can interpret that maybe Hashem is giving you a sign. And it's not under the problem of lois nachashu, don't be superstitious. V'omer Rab Shvatya, another thing Rab Shvatya said. Omer Rab Yochanan, the name of Rab Yochanan. Kol hakoyer b'loi ni'ima, if you read the Chumash without the trup, Vishoina, you learn Mishnayos b'loi zimmer without the song. So in old times, all the Mishnayos had a song to it. Every Masechta had its own song. Every Mishnah had its own song, and basically that gives the chiyus of the learning, the life of the learning, and also it helps you remember the learning. If you have a song to it, you somehow remember the learning better because people remember the song. And I'm going to point out to you something fascinating. That's why they never went to correct. Let's say sometimes you find the Mishnah is missing words, and we can't figure out what's going on over here. It's missing words in the Mishnah. And the Gemara says, something missing, we have to put this in the Mishnayos. And all over Shas you find that. And yet, they never put it back into Shas. They always left the Mishnah looking with the missing words in them. Why didn't they correct them? And the answer is because each Mishnah had a song, and if you started adding words to a Mishnah, people will forget. It will shift the song a little bit, and people will forget the Mishnah and the song. So therefore, they left the mistakes where they are. So Rab Shvatya said, if you learn without the ima, without the trup, or you're learning Mishnayos without the song, all of because of oimer, v'gam ani nesati lehem chukim v'loy tovim. I gave you chukim which you think are no good. Statues. Maskiv loy, like Baya says, if someone doesn't know how to carry a tomb, are you trying to say that the mitzvahs and the laws of Hashem don't come alive in him? It's possible to be somebody that can't carry a tomb, yet he can remember the learning. It does provide him a chiyas. Chorus Bay, I look at Rabbi Sharshid, the Amash, that he says is referring to this. If you have two Talmidei Chachamim sitting in one city, they're not in harmony with each other in halacha. They don't back and forth with each other in halacha. They stay to their own. You can't come alive with the learning if you don't debate it, because all of Talmud is all about debate, going back and forth, each one expressing their own opinion. And if you have two Talmidei Chachamim sitting in one city and they don't meet up and discuss opinions and debate, so the Torah doesn't come alive. Torah is like a harmony which needs a group to become alive. It's all part of the same idea that you learn with a song, and you have to also learn with a chabura. Amar Aparnach, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol ha'oiches Sefer Torah aram. If you grab a hold of a Sefer Torah without gloves, so to speak, with your bare hands, and pashis, your hands, you didn't wash your hands. Nikba aram. When you die, they're going to bury you without clothing. You're touching the Sefer Torah with your bare hands, they're going to bury you without clothing. So aram sal kadaitich, what do you mean? They're going to bury him without clothing? I mean, is that what the Chavre Kadisha is supposed to do? Al ema nikwa aram b'loy mitzvahs. You're buried without clothes, without mitzvahs. Frag the Gemara, b'loy mitzvahs sal kadaitich, without mitzvahs. You did mitzvahs all your life, and you did one thing wrong, holding a Sefer Torah with your bare hands. You're buried without mitzvahs. Allah Omar Abaya, Nikba Oram, you're buried without clothes, so to speak. Your mitzvahs are your clothes. Below oisa mitzvah, that mitzvah you're missing. In other words, that means that mitzvah that you did, let's say they called you up for an aliyah, and you held onto the Sefer Torah with your bare hands, and you made the aliyah, you lost the mitzvah. That mitzvah is lost to you because you held on to the Sefer Torah with your bare hands. That's not respectful. So the best thing is to hold it. Rav Taisa says, "Aval but you should hold it with a talus, so to speak, And then Taisus ends off, Taisus wants to end off the Masechta with a nice word. So he said, the right hand of God is long life, and the left hand is wealth and honor. So that's what the Gemara says. Oma Rabbi Yanai, Berei de Rabbi Yanai, Sava Mishmei de Rabbi Yanai Rabba. Rabbi Yanai, the son of Rabbi Yanai Saba, said in the great Rabbi Yanai, Mutev tigolel hamitpachas while yigolel Sefer Torah. They wrap the Sefer Torah usually like in a long lahavdala towel or wrap. So if you're rolling a Sefer Torah to be wrapped up in a towel, right, in a sheet, so wrap the sheet around the Sefer Torah. Don't do it the other way around. Don't put the Sefer Torah in, then wrap the Sefer Torah around within the mitpachas, within the sheet. Then we end off the Gemara. Vaydaber Moshe es miyadei Hashem el bnei Yisrael. So mitzvason she occurring oisen kol echad ve'echad bezmane. From there we learn that you're supposed to read every Yom Tov in its own time. In its own time, meaning that every kriya, Yom Tov kriya, has to be read on the Inyane Shel Yom. Tana Rabbanan. That was the Mishnah said it. So the Gemara adds one thing. Moshe tikim lehem liyisrael. Moshe made a rule for the Jewish people. The Ephesians should talk about and ask questions and delve deeper into the topics of the day. For example, Hilchos Pesach. On Pesach, you should have lectures about Pesach. Hilchos Atzeres, Ba'atzeres. The halachos of Shavuos should be talked about on Shavuos itself. Hilchos Chag, the halachos of Sukkah, B'Chag. It means to go very deeply into Ian on these halachas should be done on the Yom Tov itself, and you get more of a siyata d'shmaya. So where do you see that in the pasuk? Because Rashi explains, why does it have to say Vaydaber Moshe? Vaydaber Moshe is miyadei Adonai b'nei Yisrael. Every mitzvah Moshe said to b'nei Yisrael. So what's unique that Moshe spoke the Yom Tov to the b'nei Yisrael? So the teretz is that this pasuk is exactly teaching you that idea, that Moshe would learn with the halachas of each moed in its own time, to teach you the laws of Hashem and the mitzvahs of Hashem, and you should get schar of those mitzvahs, you for yourself and your kids, bezeh ubaba, in this world and the next world. You see how Rashi ended off his pirish over here, just to end off on a davar tov, like Taisus ended off. And Rashi ended off that you'll schar, the reward that you get for all the mitzvahs that you do is in this world, El Baba in the next world. Hadron Allah b'nei Eir v'slika la Masechta Megilah. Hadron b'nei Eir v'slika la Masechta Megilah. Hadron b'nei Eir v'slika la Masechta Megilah. Baruch Hashem, we were zeicha to finish Masechta Megilah Be'ez Hashem in good health. We should continue to start Moed Katan. I'll just briefly for 30 seconds just give you what Moed Katan is all about. Moed Katan is about Chol HaMoed, and in the Chumash it doesn't really teach you. It doesn't really say outright that you can't work on Chol HaMoed. It just tells you that the first day of Yom Tov is Shabbosayin, the last day is Shabbosayin. But how do you know the intermediate days are also holy? There's a remez in a pasuk, and because there's a hint in a pasuk that the intermediate days are holy, so it could be deraisa or derabanan. For that reason, we don't work on Chol HaMoed. And the Masechta discusses what works are permitted on Chol HaMoed and what work is not permitted on Chol HaMoed. Anything that have to do with Simchas Yom Tov, yes. Things that are not have to do with Simchas Yom Tov is not. But there are exceptions like Davar Ovid, a Tzibur thing, and we'll learn all about that in Masechta. And then finally, the end of Masechta ends off with Adinim of Avelis. So Be'ez Hashem, we should be zeicha to be able to finish Masechta Moed Katan and more Masechtas as well.
Couple of questions.
Amen.
Baruch.
Amen.
Yes. Somebody should make somebody who goes to shul or whatever. Should,
I'll do it tomorrow.
On behalf of the Oila, make a kaddish.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna have. I have my little wine over here. Yeah. Yeah.
In 31 Jahre, in Verschiedene, die kommen, Kapoiden, all die Klules, und die kommen Verschiedene. Da kommt die Deutschen, da muss man schießen die Jeden in der Ausung von der Heims. All die Klules, und die kommen Verschiedene.
Wow.
Genau, die Klules, die kommen Kapoiden.
Yeah, Tichla Hashuna Bekiloi says, going schwere Uren.
Ja, ich bin gewesen dort. Ja, ich bin gewesen dort.
Yeah. Those long Leben.
Thank you.
Yeah. What did you want to say, Mayor?
Yeah, quick questions. Why is it that we pay more in a shul for Galila than for the Aliyahs if Galila is more valuable? And number
Pay
two,
less. You pay less.
I never see anybody holding a shul with a tallis. They hold it with the hand.
Oh,
What?
well, the second thing is, I don't know why people pay. If someone could answer that question. From the Gemara, it says Galila is the most important. So I don't know why Galila did not get the importance. People pay less for it. I'm not sure. But as far as holding,
Because they can make a Mishnah Baruch and get their money's worth. You know,
right, the Misha Berach is,
with
yeah, that
Galila.
could be. You don't get such a Misha Berach from a Galila. Everybody, right, that could be.
You can't add all the names in.
The other thing is that as far as holding the Sefer Torah, if you wash your hands,
Right.
so then that's not, I don't think that's what the Gemara is talking about.
No,
It's
but
talking about you
nobody
didn't wash it.
touches the Torah with their hands.
Right, because
hold
they didn't
the
wash
Eitz
it.
Chaim.
Right,
No, they hold the Eitz Chaim.
They hold the
don't
Eitz Chaim.
hold the actual cloth.
right. Yeah, but sometimes you're
Right.
correcting the Galila. When you, let's say the Galila is
No,
messed
so
up.
they take a tallis.
Tallis.
They take
Usually
the
they
cuff,
take a towel.
the cuff of the suit jacket and the sleeve. Be
Yeah.
careful.
Or
Tallis macht das so ein bisschen. Tallis.
Yeah, mitten Talis.
Tallis.
yeah, but to lift the Torah, you don't hold
But
it with.
that's with the Eitz Chaim. That's not
Yeah.
with the cloth.
Yeah.
Halt mir bei der Händler, beim Haus.
Yeah, by the house. But it's Batzachaim. Yeah.
When do we finish the entire cycle of all the
Heim halt mir das, nicht bei der Seite teuer.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Ja,
Ja.
ja, das Haus gesehen.
Yeah. Very good. Fine. Mit der Eibishter's help, we finished Masechta Megilah. Getting Shabbos Shira. Tomorrow, don't forget to put the crumbs out for the birds, for the feigelich.
For the squirrels. For squirrels.
A bissel challah for the feigelich morgen. Shabbos Shira is morgen.
Na Shikoye.
Yeah, I get the nacht, everybody.
All right.
Mazel.
Mazel tov.
Good enough, Mazel tov.